next speaker that we have with us that I will bring in is Lauren Gibson, and we are going to learn about empowering young people to create change today. So I'm going to add Lauren in. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you, thank you.
We're so excited to have you today. As a science teacher myself, I teach first and fourth graders. I am thrilled to hear about your journey that started, sounds like, in middle school and has continued on to being a doctoral student today. So I'm thrilled to have you join us. And with that, I will let you take it away. Are you going to do a shared screen at all?
Yeah, I am. Give me just
great.
1 second.
We can go ahead and get that started.
Great.
Excellent. Great. All right. Well, I'll let you take it away, Lauren.
Fabulous. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Gibson, and I am a PhD student at NC State University studying environmental education. I'm also a youth engagement specialist at NOAA's Office of Education, and I'm also one of this year's National Geographic Young Explorers. And today I'm super excited to be talking to you all about a topic that has been near and dear to my heart, as mentioned, for many years, youth environmental empowerment. So we often hear that young people are our future leaders, the future of the planet, our upcoming change makers. But when we focus on young people just being our future, we often forget to talk about the power that young people can have to influence our planet today. So today we will be talking about youth empowerment for environmental action. We will start by exploring some of the impacts that we know young people are already having. And then we'll chat through some of the suggestions for adults that might be hoping to work collaboratively with young people for environmental and biodiversity betterment. So let's start with the impact that young people are having on the environment. So we've all likely heard of Greta Thunberg and the incredible youth movement that she started, but I want to kind of open up today's talk by sharing with you all a smaller scale, more personal story, my story. Growing up, I was obsessed with animals, as I think many joining might be. I was that weird 6-year-old kid who carried around a bird field guide on my person at all times, just in case there was, for some reason, a need for an emergency bird identification. And that excitement for animals didn't really diminish over time. In 7th grade, in this middle picture, I heard the incredible Dr. Jane Goodall, a renowned chimpanzee scientist, give a talk about her conservation work. And that talk also mentioned that young people could have an impact when they were still young. There wasn't some magical age for impact that I had to be waiting for. And that inspired me to get a group of friends together to start doing small-scale environmental projects. Your classic Arbor Day tree plantings, invasive plant pulls in this picture on the far right, as well as some fundraising drives. And one day, when my mom was out grocery shopping, she came across an ad for a contest that would award $10,000 to the group to figure out how to best use that $10,000 to make their community a greener place. My friends and I, who had been working on all these small environmental projects, were super excited about this idea and wanted to enter the contest. But as 8th graders, we were kind of struggling to figure out what sort of environmental project would use this full $10,000. We thought that maybe the money could be better used on many smaller projects, and better yet, we could use that money to allow other groups of young people to create and lead their own projects. My mom told us that this was the general idea behind a grant program. And so with this plan to create a small grant program in hand, we applied to and actually ended up winning the $10,000 grant. And thus, the Carmel Green Teen Microgrant Program was born in 2000. So this By Youth for Youth program provides guidance as well as funding for groups of young people that are seeking to lead their own environmental projects back in my hometown in Carmel, Indiana. So since it was founded in 2009, the program has funded 67 different projects, ranging from tree plantings to fishing line recycling drives, to organic accessible community gardens at special needs schools, wildflower reintroduction projects, school-wide recycling initiatives, and much, much more. Now, what sort of measurable impacts did these youth-led projects have? From an environmental and biodiversity impact perspective, we found that the impacts were pretty significant. Each year, the projects collectively mitigate over 500 tons of carbon dioxide from being emitted into the atmosphere. They also avoid tens or thousands of plastic water bottles being used, as well as over 500,000 plastic bags. They planted thousands of native trees and plants to be pollinator homes for native pollinators, and recycle literally tons of waste from schools each and every month. So we see from this that young people can and have had an impact on the environment just in this one small. Beyond an environmental impact, we also found that the funded projects really had a significant impact on the people within the community as well. Almost 70 projects were funded, showing young people that they can make a difference in the community, that became almost commonplace. The projects collectively involved over 1,000 young people, which was awesome, benefited tens of thousands of people within our community, and saved our residents a lot of money in energy efficiency and resource reduction. We also got the backing of our mayor, found in this photo here, who continued to fund our program through the city of Carmel, where we were based, for years after the $10,000 grant ran out initially. So this program is still going on today, 12 years later, if I did my math right. All right, so that was kind of just one example of a single community doing this, youth-led environmental movement at a small scale. But kind of what happens when we zoom out and try to generalize the impact that young people might have on their communities using social science data? After all, I am a PhD student, so I can't really get through a talk without talking a little bit about social science data. So I want to talk a little bit about the fact that when you teach kids, their parents can also benefit and learn. Other adults in the community can also benefit and learn. One of my past colleagues and current associate professor at Penn State, Dr. Danielle Lawson, found in a study that after kids learned about climate change in school, their parents actually showed higher levels of concern about climate change kind of after this lesson happened. And that this increase was actually strongest for conservative fathers and for those who were learning from daughters. I thought that this finding was super exciting, really cool and interesting, because it shows that, young people can be this kind of conduit for broader community level changes of mindset, changes of behavior around the environment and around biodiversity, and even tough issues like climate change, which can be a little intractable and politically charged, at least here in the US. So, investing in kids is also investing in the community as a whole, which is pretty cool. And we're also kind of looking now at how far those ripples of change kind of extend beyond students who learn about the environment. So we know that their parents' attitudes might change after the kids learn about some environmental topic like climate change. But do these ripples extend beyond parents to other adults in the community? How about to local officials? And this is something that myself and my lab mate Jenna Hartley are now working on at NC State, which is super exciting, and results to come. Just stay tuned until my dissertation is done in a few years. But we're excited to kind of be trying to figure out how we can track the spread of knowledge beyond kids kind of throughout the community and see those ripple effects of change. Okay. So now that hopefully I've convinced you that young people do in fact have an influence on their environment, can impact their community, environment, and biodiversity for the better, I want to talk a little bit about how adults might be able to empower young people to take action on the environment and biodiversity. How do we start this impact to begin with? So there's a lot of, again, social science research around these things called youth-adult partnerships. So basically, it's what it sounds like. It's a collaboration between young people and between adults to work together towards a shared goal. And these youth-adult partnerships have a few key characteristics that I kind of want to highlight. First of all, they involve authentic decision-making for young people. This means not just having young people at the table in board of directors, etc., just as kind of a token check, we said that we involved young people. That's not the same as giving them actual decision-making power, trusting them to help create decisions for your organization and for your community's environment. Another key component is natural mentorship. And what this kind of means is having adult partners that get it, that trust them to have some influence, that know that they can have an impact on the environment, and are able to kind of learn side by side with the young people. Reciprocity is another kind of learning side by side element here. That understanding that young people will teach adults, adults will teach young people. It's not just a one-directional flow of information. People are co-learning, helping each other as you go. And the final component here of effective youth-adult partnerships is community connectedness. It's really important when forming these partnerships that young people can be connected with the broader community, with people in power. Local decision makers is a great place to start, and see how their work influences their community as a whole, and kind of connect with their locale and with the people inside of it. And when these youth-adult partnerships are done right, a lot of good stuff can happen. For young people, if youth-adult partnerships are done right, you see a lot of emotional and cognitive engagement. So they're on kind of academic level, they're also more emotionally connected to the topics that they're working on, which is really important for making sure that they feel like they can have an impact on those topics in the future. And these partnerships also really impact adults in pretty meaningful ways too. Studies have shown that adults engaging in youth-adult partnerships often come out with new views on youth abilities. They do think more and more that young people can and do make a difference, which is really big. There are often improved outcomes for the organizations or the causes that they're working towards. So not only are the people changing, but the outcomes that they're working towards are being affected as well. And finally, adults often kind of reaffirm their commitment to working with youth in the future after engaging in these effective youth-adult partnerships. So hopefully there will be a snowball effect of, you do something right, working with young people to start, and that kind of continues on in later work. Now, I kind of want to close out with some tips on youth-adult partnerships as informed by my work with the Carmel Green Teen Microgrant Program. These are tips that worked really well for us when we were leading this kind of by youth for youth microgrant program, and take or leave whatever works best for your program. So when we form our board, youth board members always outnumber adult board members. We really want this to be a youth-driven program, and so it's really important that the number reflects that, the board balance reflects that, and that we also recognize that young people often, have a lot of stuff to balance with schoolwork, and so the number of young people should outnumber adults, just so that work balance can work out as well. We also had a rule in all of our board meetings that young people speak first when a question is posed to the board. This was because we found out partway through our, I think, first or second year, that when we had people write down their ideas and then share them out loud, the things that were being shared out loud often didn't match what was written down if an adult spoke first. So for example, if an adult said, "I love this funded project idea, I see no problems at all with it, I 100% think we should fund it," maybe the board members who didn't feel that way, that were young people, would kind of tamper their voices a little bit and not speak up. So we found that having young people speak first kind of got rid of that intimidation factor a little bit. So they didn't have to be vocally disagreeing with an adult, that the adults could hear their voices first and respond accordingly. This third tip, nothing is more important or is too important for youth voice, was another important one that we found out. Recently, the young people of the Carmel Green Teen Board applied for a big award, the President's Youth Environmental Action Award. They did this independently of the adult board members. We weren't sure if the award was going to pan out, but because of the youth initiative on this, They actually ended up traveling to BC and accepting the President's Youth Environmental Award recently. So that was pretty exciting. And so if a presidential award is not too important for youth force, I don't think anything is. I also wanted to point out that sometimes it's helpful to know where youth are more effective than adults. I don't mean this as an insult to adults, but I just want to kind of point out that sometimes young people are the better people to do the job. For example, our young board members often go and talk to local Boy Scout groups, Girl Scout groups, environmental science clubs at schools to tell them about the Carmel Green Teen Microgrant Program and availability of funding that these groups might be able to apply for if they have an idea for an environmental project they want to start up in the community. That works a lot better when students are talking to students, when it's a peer-to-peer conversation, rather than adults coming in and kind of talking at a school club, for example, or a Boy Scout group. Another place where young people are a lot more effective than adults, we found, was in asking for donations. That, when we approached local businesses about, donating a few dozen donuts to a grant award ceremony so that we could celebrate those who had just gotten funded projects. It's pretty hard to say no to kids asking for those sorts of things. So we found a few places where young people might be more effective than adults. I'm sure you'll find a lot more as well. And finally, I wanted to mention the importance of showing appreciation to your youth team. In these youth-adult partnerships, power sharing is great, seeing each other as equals is great, but it's also important to recognize the distinct needs of young people in moving forward in their careers. So things that we have focused on, providing help with resumes, making sure that all of our board members knew that they could include the Carmel Green Teen Microgrant Board on their resume. They could get letters of recommendation from the adult leaders in the board. We unfortunately did not pay our board members, but this is something that I wish we had done a little bit better. And payment is a really important way of showing young people that their time is valuable, their contributions are valuable, and that they're being taken seriously. So I would seriously recommend trying to figure out if there's a way to financially compensate your youth team as you're working together on all of this. And with that, I would love to just close and open up for any questions that you might have. I'm happy to answer anything about youth empowerment, any of the social science stuff that I talked about to the best of my ability, or anything else that you might be able to think of.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren. That was fantastic. So I think your work sounds amazing, and it's so wonderful to see your kind of transition from getting the grant yourself and turning it into a micro grant. One of a couple of questions that we've got for you. First off is, have you thought about doing, or have you done any other micro grants in other communities that you've been a part of, or has it just been the one that you got off the ground at home?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the only one that I've done is the one that we got off the ground at home. And I didn't mention this, but once I kind of left that community to go to college out in California, that grant program was passed on to the next generation of young people who, were still local there, middle schoolers and high schoolers who were going to school within my community in Carmel. But we do have resources online available for anyone hoping to start a similar microgrant program that kind of just talk through all of our steps, all of our learnings, so that hopefully other people wouldn't have to stumble through all of the same things that we did. And I'm happy to share that link with you in the chat if that's helpful.
Great, that would be wonderful. Thank you. For any adults who are out there who are hoping to maybe start something with some of their own, if they have a child who's interested in this, do you find that it's best for the ideas to come directly from the youth, and then when you create this youth-adult partnership, then the adult kind of just steers in directions and it's all kind of led mostly by the youth? Or if you're an adult who's super excited and wants to engage your child and their friends, kind of how do you go about getting your kiddo excited to do something like this?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. I think to the amount possible, having things be youth driven by young people's interests, desires to see something change, is the most powerful way to go. That being said, I definitely didn't start my environmental work doing everything myself and generating every single idea by myself. I talked about how my mom really helped kind of get the microgrant program off the ground, and it wouldn't have happened without her kind of guiding along the way. So I think having a little bit more hand-holding in the beginning can often be helpful as people kind of find their environmental voice, kind of hone in on the issues that really matter to them, and kind of move on from there a little bit more independently, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I know your mom was pretty influential, as well as Jane Goodall. I feel like Jane Goodall was an inspiration to so many of us along the way, and more to come. But I'm curious if you think that it's once you kind of create an adult youth partnership and relationship, is there a difference in having an adult who you're related to or an adult that you're not related to? Have you seen any evidence in your studies of that yet?
That's a really, really great question. I don't have any like hard social science researchy data around that. I'm making a mental note to write that down because that would be fascinating. But I do think that the dynamics are obviously very different when you're living and working with someone at the same time versus when it's someone independent. I really liked having a mix. My mom was on the microgrant program board, as well as several other adults who I only met because they were on the microgrant program board. And having that mix of personal touch as well as kind of external mentor, I found really helpful. So whenever those kind of combinations are possible, I would recommend starting with that.
Awesome. And for your dissertation that you're writing, that we're staying tuned for 2-3 years, somewhere,
Something like that.
somewhere in the mix, do you have any predictions or hypotheses as to what you might find?
Yeah. So my work specifically is kind of following a water quality curriculum, similar to the climate change study that was done, but kind of seeing how far the ripples of that water quality curriculum kind of extend out throughout the community. Some of my lab mates' work has shown that local officials have been influenced by similar, youth-led projects related to the environment. So I'm assuming, if it's kosher to hope for something in data, that we'll find that young people will be able to influence local officials and other community members that might interact with them after they've gone through this curriculum and kind of led their own water quality related projects. But we'll see.
Amazing. I'm just going to pull in the website that you shared with us. So if people are interested, they can head to that website as well. If you were to give any other advice to specifically adults who are hoping to support youth in this, would you recommend kind of your website's a great blueprint for how to go about taking action and getting students involved? Are there any other great places for people to check out just for other resources to help set them on their way?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a major fan of Dr. Jane Goodall. She has a youth organization called Roots and Shoots that was super influential as I kind of started my environmental journey, and they have really great resources both for young people and for adults kind of looking to help lift up young voices. So I would definitely recommend Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots. That's at rootsandshoots.org. And I would also recommend an organization called Earth Force, especially for any teachers who are interested in kind of doing youth-led environmental project-based learning in their classrooms. They have a lot of great resources and kind of a step-by-step model to help teachers work through kind of handing a little bit of power to the young people in their classrooms and working through identifying an environmental problem, brainstorming, taking action, and kind of reflecting on that afterwards. So I would highly recommend Earth Force as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think in my own work as a science teacher, the best way to engage students is to have them actively do and be part of what they're studying. And so that project-based learning is just such a key piece to that, and actually having them do the work and then also share it with people beyond just their classmates is so important as well. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. I look forward to hearing the results from your dissertation and checking out your website as well. And thank you so much for joining us today for the Global BioFest.
Thank you so much.